And we are recording on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024 at 10:10 a.m. Eastern Time with Miss Amber Smith. And we are talking about your book, Unfit to Fight, which is, I think I was talking about it yesterday, or maybe it was yesterday or it was Thursday. Yeah, kind of, really, I was talking about, like, what are the chances of a military coup? And it was Dr. Spencer, and he was like, "What military? Like, how are they gonna do it? What are you talking about? They're all in like high heels and like there's like chest hair coming out of their bras." And I was like, "That's a very fair point." So that is a good point of his. But
I
guys,
was gonna say, I don't think there's any like risk of concern for that.
it's a very good point. It's like what army? Like legitimately, like not as a saying, like legitimately what army? But guys, for everybody listening, please go into the description. Please go find a link to the book, and also please go to the link for Frank's speech. That's Mike Lindell, the My Pillow guy. His video platform. They are sponsoring the podcast as well as Gold Genesis Group 1-800-200-GOLD. Please go into the description. Please support those that support the podcast. Um, but Miss Smith, please introduce yourself, and then we'll kind of jump into the fever dream that is 2024.
Sure. So I'm Amber Smith. I'm a former Deputy Assistant to the Secretary of Defense. I served at the Pentagon under President Trump, and I'm also a former OH-58 Delta Kiowa Warrior helicopter pilot. I served in Iraq and Afghanistan. I was in the 101st Airborne Division. So, for people who aren't familiar with the Kiowa, the helicopter, it's a light attack reconnaissance aircraft. We carry a 50 cal machine gun, rocket pods. We work in direct support of ground forces. So, the infantry, Marines, special forces, NATO forces, in country forces, any friendlies basically we work with. We do um, convoy security. We hunt for IEDs. We do troops in contact calls, which is basically when friendly forces are in a firefight with the enemy, they call us in to use our aero weapon systems. And it's incredible aircraft. They don't
What
actually have it anymore.
what what did you think about not to go off course? What did you think about the cancellation of the was it the SB-1 Defiant?
Mm-hmm.
The twin rotor one that was going to replace it was supposed to go like twice as fast and twice as far as the UH-60, and I think they canceled it.
So they select for the lift, they ended up selecting the Bell model, which I thought, which is the tilt rotor, and they ended up. So there's two different things here. There was the light attack uh, reconnaissance platform, I guess you could say, which they just canceled,
Hmm.
and then for the lift side of it. They were looking for a replacement to the Blackhawk. They ended up
Hmm.
going with the Bell version, which was a tilt rotor. I personally thought that was a horrible decision. It's going to cost the Army so much more money than it's listed today. They don't have the hangar space, the ramp space. They'll basically have to build all new infrastructure to support this airframe instead of going with um, the, the Defiant, which had, similar sized rotor systems, and you could use like already built infrastructure. So I thought that was not the best decision. I think it'll lead to some problems in the future. I just don't think the way I look at most of um, acquisitions and the procurement of these systems is this what is best for the people who are going to be using it? Like, is it going to be best service to them versus do people in Washington, D.C. think this is a cool piece of equipment? It's like, which one is the most practical? And going to be the most useful and sort of like battlefield multiplier. And I think they picked the wrong one.
I mean,
And then the cancellation of the um, reconnaissance aircraft. I mean, it is hard on the industry in terms of um, the program. Like, I think they're going to lose a lot of engineering talent, people who've worked on the project. Um, so that's gonna be tough, but it's honestly for like the defense industrial base right now. There's like this big transition going on in terms of technology and doctrine and how we're used to doing things versus the technology that is now available and how the military can apply that practically on the battlefield. And So so it requires change, and the
Yeah.
military is not very good at change. So,
No, they're good at fighting the last war. Yeah, and then I mean, if the V-22 Osprey is any indication, they will choose the thing that's going to kill more friendlies than anything else. And yeah,
which
I
is what
mean,
they chose for the lift platform. That's
yeah,
you just made exactly my point, was that they
yeah,
chose an aircraft that's already in the inventory, which is very similar to the Osprey, which has so many problems.
yeah. And it's, I mean, and then you wonder, you know, are we just kind of like as we, because we're, I mean, it's clearly it's not Ukraine. It's we're fighting the proxy war. Anyone with a brain can see that. You wonder if the doctrine is changing because you're seeing how in 2024 it's a World War I stalemate. I mean, there's like World War I Vickers guns with hollow sights and like infrared lasers on them, and then they're doing trench warfare. So you wonder if
So true.
we're looking at toys like the F-35 or the F-22 or the B-21 Raider, and it's like those are good when you're fighting people in tents. But is this a war of attrition? And is the whole thing just kind of like we need mass production, unmanned, you know, 10,000 drones or the suicide drones? I mean, if that's the case, I also have no idea what I'm talking about. I have a biology degree. I never served in the military. I've had on Mike Duran a couple times, and he talked about he's like he's like the new helicopters look sexy, but that was about the most I got out of him. But yeah, not to completely, no pun intended, fly off course. But yeah, I mean, yeah, or maybe the two are related. That's my job, is to relate all the different tangents into one thing. Maybe they're related. Maybe it's not that it's engineered to be woke, as I think it is, but just as a thought exercise, maybe it's just that there's no pushback. It's like you can blow up a dam and flood everything below it, or you can simply stop maintaining the dam and then it will slowly break down over time. Maybe there's no pushback to woke policies for things like Delta Force or DevGru or Ground Branch because it's moving entirely into drones. I mean, you could maybe make that argument. Is there anything near the truth with that, or is it just wild
I think there's
speculation?
a little bit of both. I think if you look back to the Obama administration and some of the pushes, um, that some of the changes that he made during his administration, with opening the doors to women in special operations without sort of looking bigger picture into some of that, and then all combat jobs basically, and then the transgender policies, uh, and then in a sense it normalized it to the point where then when President Trump came into office and tried to, you know, roll back some of the transgender policies, the sort of outrage that came with that from the Department of Defense as well. Um, and uh, then when Biden took over and he just, you know, blew the place up in terms of woke policies and DEI and CRT and the um, military academies, and stating that climate change is the biggest threat to our national security and focusing on all these green energy um, projects in the military. And um, so I think there's a little bit of both. I think there was some normalization. I think some of it was intentional from presidential administrations trying to politicize the institution, which they were successful at. And I'm talking about Obama and Biden. And then moving, when I spoke about normalizing it, then I think that they people wearing the uniform, that was their norm. They just expected it. And so some of them may not like what's being pushed upon them, but it doesn't mean that they want want anything to change basically.
Hmm. How is anything going to change other than, kind of a top-down approach of Trump getting back into office? Or is it a slow degradation? And I mean, what a
Well, it's
surprise.
tough. It's because it's there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on, and it will take President Trump getting into office and making some very, very drastic changes. Um, it will have to focus. It will require a coordinated effort from POTUS, Congress, the Secretary of Defense, all the service secretaries, the COCOM commanders, to get on the same page in terms of ripping up these policies that are destroying the military and say, we're going to go from these disastrous policies and we're now going to go back to what has been tried and true as effective, which is the Department of Defense being a meritocracy and judging people and grading people and promoting people based off of merit. The best person for the job, the most skilled and qualified, get to advance. Instead of saying, well, we're going to grade you based on, characteristics that you were born with and have no control over, which is what they've done with some of the quotas, targets, and
Just the basis of
goals,
the
or what
basis
they
of
call them
racism.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's like number one, returning the institution to a meritocracy. That's really the only way to even get the ball rolling forward. And the second one is accountability. If you look at military leadership today, and I mean both in uniform and officials, there is no accountability. There's been no accountability for the withdrawal and evacuation of Afghanistan, but also for the war itself. And then none for the COVID vaccine mandate, where they kicked out, over 8,000 able-bodied service members that were wanting to serve. There's been no accountability for that. So you see this like double standard with the higher ranking elites within the military, and this two-tier justice system where General Milley can call up his Chinese counterpart and tell him he's going to warn
Don't
them
worry.
of a strike, a military strike. And everyone just, like, no one in Washington, D.C., everybody just shrugged their shoulders and we're like, okay. So it's the institution itself has become incredibly political. They used to pride themselves on being apolitical and, being able to do what's right for the country and do what's right for the military and to be able to accomplish the mission. And that's not anymore. They don't even try to hide it anymore in terms of them, being as political as they've become.
And then is there any credence to it to where this is engineered? Because, back to Yuri Bezmenov in Active Measures, or Shiro Ishii in World War One talking about bioweapon, saying, I think his quote is, America's a machine society. They build Liberty ships, P-51s, and tanks, but it takes a soldier 18 years to be quote unquote built, so they have to kill it with bioweapons. Is this just the most effective way to fight and seemingly take down the US military by any other country, primarily China and or Russia and or Iran? Is this the only way to fight it? If they go, we can't fight it tank for tank, aircraft carrier for aircraft carrier, is this the way to go about it?
Well, that to me is more of like a societal infiltration with
Yeah.
something more like TikTok. So it influenced an entire generation. And then who is the people serving in the military, or who can the military recruit to want to serve? So that, I think, is that societal aspect, to me, is sort of a little bit different than the policies pushed down on the military themselves, and basically how they handle it and enact those policies. But I do think what you bring up about like society and how society has changed and what the kids are essentially being taught about America. Like, you look back to 9/11, and when 9/11 happened, how unified and patriotic the country was, instantaneously, everybody came together. And I talk about this in my book, about how different society was back then versus today. And in the grand scheme of things, 20 years is not that long of time
No.
for us to have like gone in this downward spiral as a society in terms of like not being patriotic, and like this younger generation isn't interested in the military, and they don't understand why our nation is different and needs to be defended, and the freedoms that we have every single day that everybody enjoys, isn't a guarantee. And they don't understand that the military is what is standing between, for the most parts, them and those freedoms. And so I think there's going to be a very rude awakening when this recruitment crisis only grows, because we have sort of taken for granted this all volunteer force that has been in existence since the end of Vietnam.
Vietnam, yeah.
And it's caused this massive divide between the civilian population and those who serve. And it's only getting worse. This hasn't happened overnight. This has been growing for some time, but it is the rate and the speed of which it has grown is now just, it's how do you stop it? And it's pretty frightening if you have a 15, 16, 17-year-old son in high school right now.
Mm. Yeah, it kind of seems like there's, off the top of my head, I would say three ways in which this changes for better or worse. One would be a world war and or a 9/11-esque event that galvanizes the nation. The other would be we just slowly move into more and more automation or drones. Just, you know, kind of roll at the punches. Like no one wants to serve. Cool. We'll have one guy serve. And, maybe as AI develops more and more rapidly, you would have drone operators that maybe you could mimic them, put on like an fMRI helmet or something, and actually like map the neural net of how they operate. Like there's a guy I have on here all the time, Dale Comstock. He was in Delta Force, and like I always joke like, yeah, no, we're all so fucked when like their robots come online and they just scan Dale's brain, and all of a sudden they have 100,000 Dales made out of Kevlar that run on solar energy. Like it's over. So it's that, or it's what we're doing in Ukraine, which is just seems to be the new iteration of the military industrial complex of like, yeah, no, we're leaving the Middle East. No, it's fine. This is just dollars, right? There's mean tweets, there's people going, the more money, all the more money for Ukraine and Israel, but not for us. And then it's gone in the next cycle. Versus, if you're sending 100,000 US servicemen and women abroad, then there's more uproar. Or, and lastly, and this is not from like tree hugging hippies, it's from like former SF guys I have on here who are all talking like, yeah, if you want people to join the military, you have to stop having these wars of empire. Like you have to stop. And again, this isn't like, some white chick with dreads talking about it. This is like these like former Delta guys, former, DevGru guys, and they're like, what are we doing in Qatar? Like, what are we? And then there's the argument that you just brought up. It's like, yeah, well, I mean, do you want these freedoms that don't exist in human history? We are a weird little gem that happens to be separated by two oceans with a ton of waterways and resources. I mean, I mean, if there's ever been a promised land, it's here. It is backed by, the overwhelming might of the U.S. military. So, is there any good way that it ends? Not that you have the $1 trillion crystal ball, but just pass it on to you. Solve
I
the
don't
world's
know.
problems.
I don't know. I will tell you that based on my research, um, my own personal experience, both in the E-ring at the Pentagon, seeing things how they work, um, like at the top levels of the
Mm-hmm.
Pentagon, and then my own military service, people should be very concerned.
Oh God.
And uh, especially, I keep coming back to this all volunteer force. I think it is um, not sustainable right now. And I think it's like the failure of it is the inevitable in terms of the path that we are going down right now. And people, you hear every excuse in the book. You hear people, you see, brass testifying on Capitol Hill about how, well, I don't think we're there yet where we need to talk about the draft or something like that. And it's like, thank you for pointing out one of the biggest problems that exists with leadership today. You don't want to talk about this glaringly obvious problem
The
that
tsunami
everybody
on the
else can
horizon.
see. And you want to say, well, I don't think we need to talk about that yet. We 100% need to talk about it, because you guys aren't making your numbers for years now in terms of recruitment. So what's equally as terrifying, if not worse, than the recruitment crisis is the retention crisis, where all those service members that you just talked about, these guys with priceless experience because of the post 9/11 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and other areas around the globe, are saying, I'm out. Like at first chance
Yeah.
I can get, it is no longer worth it for me to stay in. What? And people are questioning their service. They're saying, what am I fighting for when I come home? I have to worry about my own family safety here in America because of the wide open border, because of the crime and the violence that has absolutely skyrocketed. And we're sending, $60 billion every 6 months to Ukraine to fight a proxy war for Russia. That has the exact same outcome when somebody finally decides to stand up and cut the bleeding, stop the bleeding when it comes to the money. And so I think that plays into the recruitment issue as well. People are saying, why am I going to choose this path for my life and the sacrifices that come with it when I can choose a civilian career and do something else and um, not suffer the consequences of politicians in Washington, D.C. that are obsessed with war.
Hmm. And then you have to start wondering again, how would you take down the US military if you had to get creative, or the US empire? You would make it a place that no one wanted to defend, not because it's not worth defending, but because the people in charge are putting you in such ridiculous levels of unjustified and irrational harm's way, and then destroying the homeland itself to where you're fed on Brigadier General Robert Spalding, who piloted B-2 Spirits. And he talked about, he was like, it started to dawn on me towards the end of my career as I was taking off from these runways in the US to, fly 30 hours to the Middle East, that I'm leaving a living room where there is anti-US propaganda on the television in my own
Yeah.
house. What am I doing in this $2 billion nuclear bomber that China can't do for a hundredth of a penny? And
Yep.
again, I mean, Dale Comstock, who I have on here all the time, is talking, his son's a Green Beret, and he's like, I tell him all the time to like get out of the military. And I'm like, that is such like an insane thing. You have the youngest ever member of Delta Force who was in CIA's ground branch, and he's saying like, don't do it. I mean, the pinned episode on my Rumble account is with Dale because his wife was born in Bali and he can't get her to the US for cancer treatment. Dale, who did like personal security for H.W. Bush, like was in Mogadishu, like was on the team that was going to go get Duran, was like doing all this post 9/11 CIA black ops stuff. Dale, not, not, you know, not like if I joined the military and I was like a cook somewhere and, like some cushy station in Italy or something. Like Dale can't get his wife back. And he's resorting to me. And he said on the pinned episode, he's like, no one else is helping me. It's just you, Tommy. And I'm like, why am I the only person helping Dale? Like, why is this like, how come this didn't go up the chain of command and someone just like sent like the extraordinary rendition Learjet, just go pick him up, bring him in. Like, if Dale, it's kind of like the idea of like, if they can do this to Donald Trump, former president, billionaire, what can they do to you? If they won't help Dale, not for what is it? Did Dale get caught selling nuclear secrets to China and he needs a bailout? No, 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 no. His wife has cancer and he just wants to get her here. Doesn't want anyone to pick up the tab. He just wants to get her here. If they won't do that for him, what what in God's name's the incentive to go, yeah, I'm gonna go enlist, be forced to take a vaccine that's probably gonna turn my heart to, beef jerky. And if that doesn't happen, I'll get yelled at by some dude who chopped his genitals off and thinks he's a fox and is wearing bunny ears and a leather dog mask. Yeah, I'm gonna go do that. Or I'll go get a job in tech.
Yeah.
But sorry, I know I just kind of sometimes I
No,
dissociate,
I
forget
mean,
I'm
like,
doing a
but
podcast, just start yelling.
no, but that's like, so that's like you just listed out some things about the why. People used to join the military because they loved America. They loved
Yes.
what America stood for. They wanted to preserve our nation for their kids, for future generations. So they got to grow up in a country where they got, a similar lifestyle, which was freedom that apparently, like, people want to talk about freedom. I don't know if people understand what freedom actually is and what it means when it goes away. And the reason for those freedoms. You have people at the Air Force Academy, and I write this again about it in my book. You have cadets at the Air Force Academy not understanding what the oath of office means and how it applies to the Constitution and what they are supposed to be upholding. So they are now having to have these special like clubs or like groups to talk about this and to teach them this. And it's because it's no fault of their own. Like, it's not their fault that they don't understand. They, from the time they're born to the time they get to the academies, a lot of them are being indoctrinated by the public school system that is only talking about everything that is wrong with America and rewriting history and saying that the institutions that were created are oppressive and, making up all these terrible things about our country that gives people opportunity that most people can't imagine around the world. That's why most people who come here legally love America and love everything that the nation provides for them, which is the freedom and opportunity. And you don't get that in other places. And people don't understand that. You look at some of the crimes people are charged with in places like England for speaking out, for
Yeah.
speaking. And most people are like, but that's England, freedom of speech. And it's like, okay, like you don't get it. You actually don't understand the difference between America and a place like England, which you probably think is very similar. But guess what? They don't have the United States Constitution that gives you those freedoms and protections. And people don't get how valuable that is. And so, like, it also comes together with the education aspect of our youth and how we are failing them there. And so it adds up when you get to the point where people are like, should I serve my country? Should I enlist? And people are like, no, why am I going to sacrifice for a nation that does all these things that I don't agree with?
For a
Not
nation that,
me, but other people.
yeah, no, for a nation that seemingly actively hates me, right? It's yeah, no, again, I have a couple friends who one immigrated from Sofia, Bulgaria, and the other one from Kosovo, and I've had the latter on here, and I mean, yeah, I mean, like it's almost like it's almost like a cheesy trope. It's got like the little American flags and stuff, but he came here like barely spoke English. I met him working security at a bar in 2014, and now he's like a physical therapist and has a shipping business on the side. He's like loaded, like married, wife, kids, and he's like the most just all out American guy. And he gets like, I have him on here, and people are like, "Who's that like propagandist you had on?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Like, no, that's someone from somewhere else. And yeah, there is, and I don't really see any other way that it's going to happen other than some sort of horrific rude awakening. I mean, like this is not normal, like what we
Yeah.
live in.
Well, it's sad that I always say, like, when it comes to people like yelling about politicians and hating on politicians, it's like we have no one to blame but ourselves as a society. We are the problem. So yeah, you may not like the politician that society elects or Joe Biden, whatever. It's sad because it's been generational complacency where people are not focused on what matters in this country. And once again, like, a good part of our discussion is thinking that everything that we want is a guarantee, and people not realizing that it's extremely fragile and can be easily taken away when, it's the narrative is pushed in the right way. And so, you want to fix America, you have to fix society, which is what's broken.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the only, and this isn't even really like a hope, but I guess like the only positive outcome I can see is, it's like when you're on the highway for 10 hours and you start to kind of drift and you hit the rumble strip is and you go, shit, right? I can only hope that there is some sort of rumble strip. You don't want to go over and smash the median and be killed because there's no lesson learned. You didn't course correct. It's just over.
See, I kind of think we've hit the rumble strip and we didn't course correct. And
Oh God.
I think people are have started to wake up. I do. My fear is um I hope it's not too far gone to correct now that people are waking up, I guess is my point. Um I always said that with the like but I do think that's like a great point what you said about the rumble strip is like, yeah, we were just cruising along like fat, dumb,
Everything's
and happy for a
good.
very long time and then started to drift to the rumble strip and maybe we did bounce back a couple of
Yeah.
times and do the course correction. But like I feel like where we are now is we've like continued through the rumble strip and it's like, all right, are we gonna make that drastic turn back, correct ourselves, or are we gonna keep going?
So I guess the only one of the few there are some, they're few, but they do exist. Silver linings are when I look at something like censorship, and I've been banned from YouTube, Twitter, iTunes, Reddit. You don't censor if you don't need to.
Why do they ban you?
I interviewed Dr. Robert Malone and Dr. Peter McCullough. Dr. Peter McCullough is the most
Oh,
published cardiologist
yeah,
about
they
history.
were
Dr.
crazy about the COVID stuff there for, well, they still are, but
I had them on before they ever went on Joe. They went on Joe Rogan. Everyone, like the White House, started tweeting about Rogan, and I was like, tweet at me. Like I need the PR. But I had them on, and I got banned from YouTube for that, and then all the other ones. But again, that's an example of like you don't need to censor if you have overwhelming support. No one needs to come out. There's no censorship apparatus for people that are like, I like killing puppies because it's next to no one. They're psychopaths, and everyone goes, "Yeah, no, screw that guy. That guy's a demon from hell. He likes to kill puppies." There's no like, shut it down, you know, throttle it, shadow ban it, remove them from Twitter. They're spreading anti-puppy misinformation. There is none of that because no one needs to. If you have to ban every little thing about inflation or election fraud or vaccine injury or the transgender identity of the latest school shooter or whatever it is, it does say that you're doing that because it doesn't mean it's not dangerous. If anything, it's more dangerous. But you're doing that because it is an increasingly smaller and increasingly radical, unstable, and unconfident regime and cadre of followers that are not, they know it's not a popular opinion. So the fact that you have to censor it tells me that the overwhelming majority, far more than you and I think or anyone else feels, because that's the other thing is you want people to feel isolated. That's the problem with Tank Man in China, is he showed that he wasn't alone. That's why they run him over and get rid of him or whatever they did. You don't want people to feel like they have numbers. You want them to feel alone. You can't do it in a stadium. If there's 100,000 people cheering for, I'm from New England, for the Red Sox, you can't look at any one of them and be like, you're an idiot, because they're surrounded by everyone. They're like, no, you're an idiot. Versus if you're just by yourself on a phone in an apartment, and you say, hey, why is the southern border open? And maybe 100,000 people agree with you, but you don't want anyone to know that. So instead, you throttle it and you say it got 2 likes and 1 retweet, and you go, "Oh, I guess I'm alone." They don't want you to know you, and you don't do that if the overwhelming majority of real people agree with you. You do
mm-hmm.
that when no one else agrees with you. So that's
Yeah,
like,
I think that's a great point.
one of the, I don't know, one of the few silver linings I can
And
find.
it is just like it's interesting to me how um threatened the institution can be by a conversation. And like I always say, like if they weren't, they wouldn't care. You know, they wouldn't be censoring you if they weren't
Exactly.
scared of what you were saying.
Exactly. Do you think the Chinese government, think they look at someone being like, I don't like you? It's like yeah, we're an overwhelming panopticon force of tyrannical technocratic hell and we'll kill you and your family. They don't care. If you're shutting everything down, it's because you feel great fear. Shut it down. Play whack-a-mole. Cover it. I don't then it's yeah. So that's kind of how I feel about it. And I mean, I don't know. But I know you got to run, so I'll let you go. I'm gonna keep you a minute longer. Guys, please go buy the book. It's in the description. Miss Smith, I would love to have you back on sometime.
Yeah, great conversation. Thanks for having me. Appreciate your support with the book. Unfit to Fight. It's available for pre-order right now. It'll arrive on release date, which is a week from today, next Tuesday. Thank you.
And you need to get it on Audible. My generation is we are a bunch of lazy people that listen. So
That's true.
get
I've
it
heard
up,
that.
get it on Audible.
All right.
But yeah, thank you so much. I'd love to have you back on to push the book. And guys, please go in
Absolutely.
the description. Please go grab it, pre-order it, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for your time. God bless
Thank you.
everybody. Much love. Take care. Peace.